Hi guys, I realize that it's Wednesday, not Monday, but I wanted to still get my video up this week. I apologize for it being a couple of days late. I decided to put it up anyway because I know a lot of people have been having problems with YouTube uploading their videos, and it seems like mine have so far, cross fingers, hope this one goes up, not had a problem uploading, where I know some other people have. So I don't know what the difference is with my computer or whatever. But I decided that this week I should do a video because actually I've been participating in an international eating disorder conference this week entitled Eating Disorders Across the Globe. And the issue that we're talking about this week is anorexia, the effects of anorexia, and I actually heard a very interesting and powerful session today by Dr. Ann O'Mill. And Dr. Ann O'Mill she actually was a professor at the University of Utah, but she has done amazing research in refeeding and refeeding syndrome, and she went through a whole physiological basically lesson that was very informative for me about refeeding syndrome. And some of the things, because I'm an athlete, there were a few things that she said that actually kind of clicked in my head. I'm like, wow, okay, I can see why maybe I have these issues as that I didn't realize were related to restricting behaviors when I was severely eating disordered that are long-term consequences of restricting behaviors. And so I'm going to talk about some of those today. So first of all, I want to talk about what happens with starvation in general for anybody with cognition when you are underweight, okay, or when you are severely malnourished, because some people who restrict severely also will have the same symptoms even if they're not underweight because they are malnourished. So what happens is your metabolism will actually, over time, slow down. And if any of you aren't familiar with the Ansel Keys study, you can Google it, Wikipedia, whatever. This was a study done it was done I think during World War II, but it was done on normal males. It's a study that wouldn't be approved today because of ethical issues. But basically for a 3-month period, they took, they screened these males, 40 males, for a period for, the healthiest, most well-adapted, physically, mentally males. And then they observed them changing nothing in their environment diet for 3 months, okay, just to get a baseline behavior. And then for another 6-month period, they cut their calories to a sub-starvation diet, okay, so it wasn't even the fully starvation diet that you might see for somebody who's severely restrictive. And what happened is they began to see a lot of the same symptoms that you see in anorexic patients in a very short amount of time. In a couple of weeks, they were exchanging recipes, they were talking more about food, they were stealing food, and then they started doing behaviors like food rituals, cutting up their food, sorting their food into colors. And these are normal men who did not have food issues. And then they started avoiding certain foods, and basically they had depression and anxiety resulted. And so basically they had a lot of the same classic symptoms that we see with anorexia. And the difference that Dr. O'Mill talked about, she said most people who are in a starvation situation involuntarily will lose energy. That's the weakness is actually a later sign of starvation. But with anorexia or eating disorders, instead of that loss of energy, you tend to have a hyperactive state. Okay, so we have more almost more of a euphoria and energy. So it's interesting. Anyway, so what happens is when you are in your cognitions in your brain can't function properly, then you could be at a state where when you are so sick you can't even make you can't make the choices on your own to make yourself get well when you were that undernourished. And for me, I believe that I saw a lot of these signs myself. Now that I look back, I can see some of my cognitions were very distorted, but at that time, I didn't see them as distorted. I thought they were perfectly fine. And this is what happened. So, it's very interesting. And then one of the things that happens is that when you start to treat anorexia, then there's the risk of refeeding syndrome. And what happens with refeeding syndrome is that your body has been in such a state of starvation that when it suddenly starts getting a large amount of food, it actually will, your metabolism will actually go into like an anaerobic state of metabolism, which means that it's taking everything that you're putting in, and instead of processing it, it's putting it directly into the cells. And so you can actually become deficient in vitamins because your body is taking like your potassium, your calcium, your phosphorus, and taking it out of the blood and putting it into cells. And this is when people are at the most risk for actually having seizures and can die from refeeding syndrome. This is actually one of the more dangerous times with anorexia treatment is the refeeding syndrome. And so she talks about, that what her preferred treatment is for people who are severely ill is to actually to feed the extra calories that person needs, and have them work towards eating a maintenance diet. Okay, so she feels like it's compassionate for providers to say, okay, we're not going to make you eat all this large amount of food, because you're talking like you could be eating 5,000 calories a day to get to a maintenance weight, which is a lot of food, okay? So what she will do is actually intubate the person and saying, we're going to take care of this psychologically, emotionally, so you don't have to eat that amount of food, so you can work on practicing eating food. And so they're working on getting the person to a state where they can be on a maintenance diet with the number of calories that they're going to have to face and eat on a daily basis to maintain their weight. And they will actually refeed the person until they reach that weight. And she calls this a compassionate medical intervention and not a punitive thing. And some treatment centers use this as a punitive punishment, which she doesn't agree with, and I would have to agree with her that using tube feeding as a punishment is, I have an issue with that, because most people don't choose to be anorexic, and so punishing them for being sick doesn't make sense to me. But saying this is an intervention that we're going to help you with, you may not like it at first, but in the end, most people are happy that it gave them the life back, that it saved their life. Okay, but the other issue, and this was interesting to me, is that when you start to refeed a person, you become a calorie burning machine. Okay, so your metabolism will go from a low metabolism, like that's 20 to 30% below what your resting metabolic rate would be if you were on a healthy, normal eating pattern, to a super high metabolism rate. And so people break out in night sweats, and basically they're expending extra calories in their sleep because your brain is repairing itself. Okay, your brain connections have been damaged because of lack of glucose, and in this study with the key study, actually they did a 30-year follow-up, and they found that there were some lingering effects with food, with the way that those men thought about food, that were from the starvation. In fact, 3 of those men actually became chefs because they became so interested in food. Okay, so this starvation has a long-term effect. Well, that high rate metabolism can actually linger for several years after treatment. And one of the things that I have found in my athletic training and working with a sports nutritionist and actually having my base metabolism measured is I was surprised to find that my metabolism is actually about 30% higher than an average woman of my size and stature. I find that I have to eat probably twice as many calories in my long distance running than some of the men I run with, which I always thought, this is ridiculous, I don't understand, and I didn't understand why I was crashing all the time. And I finally figured out it's because I'm not eating enough, started increasing my calories, and made a huge difference. But I'm eating twice as much as what a lot of people would expect to need or even be able to metabolize during an endurance event. And so that was